Now, wouldn't life be more straightforward if we were just self-sufficient? A bit like Tom and Barbara Good. Well, Groundwork North East and Cumbria actively encourage using every nook and cranny to grow your own veg. And to tell us more, one of my former regular experts, I do miss, actually, is Laura Ince Henry. Morning, or afternoon, Laura.
Afternoon, Ethan.
How are you?
Not too bad at all.
Excellent. Now, this is quite I don't think I've ever known about rationing in my lifetime. What's going on?
Well, the problem is that nowadays we import so much of our fruit and veg that this is the sort of thing that can happen. If it had been 15 years ago, this wouldn't have been a problem because we got all our veggies from the UK and we also ate seasonably. We wouldn't expect strawberries in December or, courgettes in the middle of January. It's just not the right time of year for them.
Well, it's funny, I think we've reached a point where I can't remember what vegetables we should be eating at what time of the year.
Well, that's one of the main problems. In general, it's always best to eat what's in season in the country that you live in, because then you're not having to ship potatoes in from Egypt or strawberries in from Morocco or anything like that. And then if something like this does happen, it's not really that much of a problem.
And the thing is, apparently it's Spain having some issues with storms and snow and stuff, and that's having an impact on the iceberg lettuce, rather ironically. So one of your encouragements is with the Street Eats project, which is encouraging people to kind of use every nook and cranny that they've got. Yeah. So how does it work? How does Street Eats work?
Basically, Street Eats is a project based in East Cleveland, and we have 3 growing hubs. So we have one at Westfield Farm in Dormanstown, we have one at Lingdale Liftoff in Lingdale Village, and we have a little growing space out the back of Loftus Youth and Community Centre. And what we're trying to do is encourage people to grow their own fruit and veg. So if this happens, you don't run out of veg, basically. For example, me personally, I used the last of my potatoes from last night for my chips.
Chips!
They were harvested in October, and they've just been stored in my garage. So it's all about not only growing your own, but knowing how to look after what you've grown to keep it for as long as possible, albeit, keeping it somewhere cold or even freezing it, drying it, pickling it, whatever, just to kind of tide you through.
But that's the thing, Laura, you really know what you're doing. The rest of us generally don't.
Well, that's why you need to join the project. The project, we basically teach all this sort of stuff. So hopefully this year we've got stuff coming up about not only growing fruit and veg and cooking, because we're doing cooking sessions at the moment because there isn't really that much growing happening at this time of year. But at the end of the year we're hopefully going to be doing jam and pickle making and all that sort of stuff as well.
Oh, now you're talking. That's a really good idea, because I think even the thing with me is I tend to buy fresh fruit and veg rather than frozen fruit and veg. Yeah. And then I always think that sometimes, you sort of end up leaving stuff and you think, well, it looks a bit worse for wear, so you end up chucking it. And I always wonder, can you self-freeze quite easily?
Oh, yes, very easily. And the other thing as well is frozen stuff that you buy in the shops has usually got more vitamins and minerals in it than the stuff you're buying fresh. Because the stuff you're buying fresh might have been harvested 2 weeks ago and kept in a cold store somewhere before being put out, whereas the frozen stuff is picked and frozen usually within 24 hours. So things like your frozen peas and your frozen veg and everything are usually better for you than the fresh stuff. Unless you're getting out of your own back garden, of course.
Well, that's the thing, you see, because not everybody's got the space for a garden, for an actual allotment type of thing. No. If you genuinely only had like a tiny patio, how much can you grow in something like that?
Well, last year I had a trough that we actually give out as part of our project to people who want to do doorstep growing. That was, it's 6 inches wide, 6 inches tall, and about 2 feet long. I grew French beans in there and basically kept picking them and kept freezing them and kept picking them and kept freezing them. And I'm still using the beans now that I grew last year in that pot. And I only had 5 plants in it.
Now, some may say, but what you get in a supermarket is variety. You can't grow a huge amount of fruit and veg, can you?
Well, you can grow a certain amount. Obviously, you can't grow things like oranges and that sort of thing. Our climate is no good for that unless you've got something like a heated greenhouse, which not all of us have the ability to have a large heated greenhouse. I know I certainly don't. But a lot of the stuff you can grow in this country a lot better than you would imagine. Things like garlic, people assume because it's used in Italian cooking and Greek cooking and Spanish cooking that it has to be grown in a Mediterranean climate. But garlic actually grows best in cold weather. In fact, some of the best garlic in the world comes from Scotland.
Really? I bet lots of people don't know that.
Yeah, so it's one of the problems that I get quite often is that people come to me and say, my garlic isn't growing, and I ask them how they're growing it. So, well, I plant it in July in my greenhouse. And well, there's your problem for a start off. You need to plant it in November in your garden and leave it all the way through the winter, and it needs the frost to actually break into the individual cloves. Otherwise, if it doesn't get frost, it actually comes up as a single bulb instead of lots of little cloves. So unless you really like garlic, it needs frost on it.
Interesting. There'll be loads of people who have no clue that is the case. Now, I suppose the whole thing about street eats is you really do not know, you don't have to know anything at all about gardening, do you?
Oh, no. If anything, it's a perfect one for somebody who has absolutely no knowledge of gardening whatsoever. Because we will teach you everything that you need to know to grow your own fruit and veg.
Now, how does it actually work? I mean, if I said to you, right, this is what I want to do, what do I have to do?
Right, so if you're in East Cleveland, in particular Dormanstown, Lingdale and Loftus, we'd basically get you a form to fill out, and depending on how good your growing skills are, if you've got no growing skills at all, you would be entered into a thing called a doorstep growing scheme. So with the doorsteps growing scheme, 3 times a year, so that's usually end of April, end of May and end of October, you would get what's known as a growing kit delivery. So that would include seeds, plants, pots, compost, and an information booklet of exactly how to grow stuff, including my email and phone number. So if you've got any problems, you could be able to ring me and basically go through my brain and get the information that you would need. If you're already an expert grower, then we've got the monthly events going on in those three areas as well. You can come down, ask me any questions you want, get involved with either cooking that's going on now. During the summer, we've got gardening going on. In the autumn, we'll have wild food walks going on, so food for free that you can then preserve, and that sort of thing. And we have our Facebook page as well, which is Groundwork Street Eats. We have a Twitter feed, which is GWK Street Eats, all one word, at GWK Street Eats. And I regularly post stuff on there about what needs planting when and all that sort of stuff. And it also has contact details for me on there as well. So if you need to ask me anything, you can just email me or phone me and ask me anything you want.
And you are very impressive. I note that from you coming on a regular basis in the show, in that you really do know your stuff. I could chuck anything at you about a plant and you would have the answer.
It might take me a while for my brain to get to the particular information and bring it forward, but I try to keep up to date with as much information as I possibly can.
It's all in there, certainly. Now, looking at it, I mean, it is a fabulous project. I love how it works, but can you actually feed your family from, a small area in your back garden?
The specialists, the experts out there, they reckon that if you plant it properly, an area that is 3 metres by 3 metres can feed a family of 4 all year, as long as you plant it properly. You've got to get your kind of sessional planting, so you're taking one plant out and immediately putting a different plant in. But a 3 by 3 metre block can feed a family of 4 for 12 months. When
you put it as simply as that, you just think, why do more of us not do that?
It's just easier to go to the supermarket and buy it, but unfortunately now you have to go in and everything's being rationed. So yeah, it's a lot cheaper as well to grow your own. If you think that a packet of lettuce is about $1.50 for a packet of lettuce seed, and you get 5,000 seeds in there, potentially you've got 5,000 lettuces worth of seed in there, and a lettuce is worth 50 pence to £1, depending on what variety you've got. I mean, 5,000 seed, 5,000 lettuce, £1 of lettuce. It is more economical to grow it yourself.
It's crazy,
and it's a lot easier as well. It's a lot easier as well when you come in on an evening and you think, oh, I've got no lettuce, and you can just pop outside and pull some leaves off, and you've got lettuce.
It is
or radish, or
Yeah, I mean, it really is an inspiring project, most certainly. And I suppose it does open up that even if you can't get an allotment, you can still do quite a bit for yourself, can't you?
Oh, yes. Well, I haven't personally got an allotment. I've got a very small back garden. Very, very small back garden. In fact, I've got a small greenhouse which takes up about a third of the garden, and 2 small beds in there. But I can grow enough in there to keep me and some of my family in things like tomatoes and carrots and all that sort of stuff all the way through the summer. And then I can freeze them as well and then use them through the winter as well.
There's no two ways that it tastes better as well, because my brother always grew tomatoes, and they were the best tomatoes I'd ever eaten.
Well, the other thing about tomatoes is the variety that they grow for the shops is bred purely for amount of tomatoes, not flavour of tomatoes. Because obviously the more tomatoes you can grow, the cheaper you can sell them for, the more money you can make. Whereas the tomatoes that most people grow at home are grown for the flavour rather than the abundance, because you don't want to end up with 25 kilos of tomatoes every week. You only want a kilo of tomatoes every week, but it tastes a lot better. So it's usually better to grow any variety at home than it is to buy from the shops, because the variety that you're growing at home is grown for flavour rather than abundance.
Anything else that you'd like to give a mention to before I let you go?
No, I think that's about it. Grow local, grow your own, and buy local if you can.
Good idea. A good bit of advice there. If you ever want to come back, you know you are more than welcome.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I'll see whether or not I can persuade my bosses to let me come back.
Wonderful. Laura, thank you so much for talking to us.
No problem.